visiting one of my constituents in Langton, Norfolk County, I sat in their backyard and my eyes were burning.
Welcome to stream, everybody.
From the horrible methane and hydrogen sulfide venting from Orphan gas wells.
Make sure to drop a like on the video as you file in.
Some over 100 years ago, and many of these companies no longer exist. Homeowners, most of whom were not even born at the time that these wells were abandoned, are now left to deal with the fallout. Communities and landowners are not able to deal with the 27,000 orphan wells in Ontario that pose an environmental and public health risk. In 2021, in Chatham, Kent, an orphan well exploded, destroying a building and injuring 20 people. I'm calling on this government to stop ignoring this problem and to ensure clean air, clean water, and safe communities for my residents of Alderman Norfolk.
The honourable member for Waterloo.
Mr. Speaker, on June 12, 2023, Waterloo Region cheered on Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets as they captured their first NBA championship. Jamal, like me, was born in Kitchener, Ontario. Jamal played at the Stanley Park Community Centre, and it was clear even then that he is an exceptional basketball player. In the Waterloo region, it was no surprise that Jamal averaged 26.1 points per game, the highest ever by any Canadian citizen. After all, a Canadian invented basketball. Jamal Murray is the 9th Canadian to win an NBA title. He is the 4th player to average 20-plus points and 10-plus assists per game in the finals, the 3 before him being Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. On behalf of the Waterloo region in Canada, thank you to Jamal's family, Roger, Sylvia, and Lamar, and to NBA champion and superstar Jamal Murray. You have made Waterloo region and Canada proud. Keep being you and doing what you do. Congratulations.
The honourable member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to celebrate 2 remarkable milestones. First, I want to congratulate Liam Tran on reaching the magnificent milestone of his 80th birthday. Lim Tran, your journey through 8 decades has been a testament to resilience, wisdom, and the beauty of a life well lived. Your dedication, kindness, and commitment to our community have touched the lives of countless individuals, inspiring us all to strive for greatness. Secondly, my warmest congratulations to the Vietnamese community of North York for working in our community for over 30 years. This remarkable organization has been a beacon of hope, support, and unity for our Vietnamese seniors. It has provided a platform for connection, cultural preservation, and the sharing of experiences. On behalf of the Humber River Creek community, I offer heartfelt congratulations to Lim Tran for a happy 80th birthday and the North York Vietnamese Seniors Association continued success in their noble endeavours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Mr. Speaker, the budget adds more than $60 billion in new deficit spending, meaning more taxes, more inflation, and higher interest rates. To quote former Liberal Finance Minister John Manley, the government is stepping on the gas with new spending while the Bank of Canada is stepping on the brakes with higher interest rates. And Mr. Speaker, ordinary Canadians are getting caught in the middle, like Jeff from Langley, who wrote to me, I thought I had been doing everything right to provide my wife and 2 small children a comfortable life. I'm absolutely petrified that when my mortgage comes up for renewal, I'm not going to be able to afford it.
Yep, so that's the fucking reality.
This government is out of touch.
Pardon my French.
Only Conservatives can bring home a government that works for the people who work. It's time to bring back the common sense of the common people.
The honourable member for Whitby.
Today I want to recognize 2 organizations that are making Canada a healthier and happier place by fostering and supporting human connectivity through face-to-face social connections. OOT is a Whitby-based social enterprise that launched on Monday, and co-founders Tiagi and Paul developed a social media platform to help people more easily find others with common interests so they can connect face-to-face. Through their business, they are fostering a sense of belonging and combating isolation and loneliness. Well is a registered Canadian nonprofit organization and is leading Canada's Human Connection movement as a grassroots community-led initiative. The Well project has been working since 2016 to share essential resources, and in collaboration with the Canadian Alliance for Social Health and Connection, they are leading the development of Canadian social connection guidelines. As the world emerges from the global pandemic, the Well project and OOT continue to forge ahead, ensuring that Canadians understand that social connection is just as important as to our health as nutritious diets and an active lifestyle. As Pete Bombachi says, it turns out the best medicine for people is people.
Honourable member for Coastal.
That was weird.
Insulting. That's how the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador describes Ottawa's approach to carbon tax. Atlantic premiers have long called for Ottawa...
Before question period starts, everybody, I'd encourage you to slap a like on the video if you haven't yet.
...burden for the people.
Try and get 100 likes before we start.
The PM's close friend, Premier Fury, said, "I take great exception to the federal minister. It's a false dilemma, and it's as insulting to us as it is simplistic." On July 1st, Atlantic Canadians will pay an extra 20 cents per litre for heating fuel as a result of Carbon Tax 1. On that same day, Carbon Tax 2.0 will add another 20 cents per litre to diesel and heating oil, 17 cents per litre to gasoline, and 12 cents per litre to propane. So those who heat their homes with oil will be slammed with a total of 40 extra cents per litre.
Exactly right.
If this Liberal government won't listen to Atlantic Canadians, then there's one thing left to do. Get rid of this Liberal government.
Yeah, buddy.
Member.
Gotta be honest, I didn't really hear what he said.
Come on.
Until after he said it.
Said she didn't want to pour fuel on the fire of inflation and that she would balance
He said, get rid of this Liberal government.
But like all NDP Liberal promises, this government did a massive flip-flop with their failed budget, admitting deficits are here to stay as they add to the debt and fuel further inflation. Random Liberals like Mark Carney say inflation is a domestic issue.
Random Liberals.
Finance Minister John Manley said government spending fuels inflation. The debt-fueled inflation made interest rates rise, and now homeowners are at a risk of defaulting on their mortgages. Canadians have as much debt as the entire GDP, and the IMF warns Canada is the most at risk of a mortgage default crisis in the G7. The NDP continue to prop up and support the Liberals, indebting struggling Canadians further. Maybe instead of going woke and virtue signaling, these NDP Liberals should rein in government spending and rewrite this failed budget so Canadians don't go broke and start losing their homes this summer.
Yeah, buddy. Here. Let's try and get to 100 likes, everybody. Smash that button. We're halfway there.
Mr. Speaker, today I would like to highlight a true local success story from my region, the 25th season of the Circuit du Paysan. The Circuit du Paysan is key to developing tourism in our region. It creates a link between the various attractions, sites, and local producers, artisans, and artists. It contributes to the growth of our local businesses. I tip my hat to all those who believed in it from the beginning and who've worked to set it up and ensure its continuity, including my friend Michel Charbonneau, former general manager of the Centre Local de Développement des Jardins de Napierville, and the creator of this incredible way to promote our region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, the international development sector in Canada is led by incredible women. Women like Lauren Ravan and her team at Oxfam Canada, who shared their work on how to improve the lives of paid and unpaid care workers in Canada and around the world. Like Anna Vogt and the international program representatives from the Mennonite Central Committee, who are in Ottawa to share MCC's work building peace globally. Like Janice Hamilton, who heads the Fund for Innovation and Transformation alongside the folks at the ICN, who are testing innovative solutions for gender equality in the Global South. These leaders are changing the world, but Mr. Speaker, they need the government to support their efforts. They need the government to reverse the 15% cut to official development assistance and to finally deliver the promised feminist foreign policy. When we make women and girls the center of our efforts, ensuring women are at the table for peace talks, acting on climate change, which disproportionately affects women and girls, and empowering women and girls to determine their own health and education priorities, we make a real difference for everyone, Mr. Speaker.
Let's try and get to 100 likes, everybody. We got more viewers than CPAC. Let's keep it that way.
Thank you,
Smash that
Mr.
like
Speaker.
button.
Hello, Dad. I would like to wish the people of Terrebonne all the best as they celebrate their town's 350th birthday this year. Since its foundation in 1673, Terrebonne has been marked by the construction of a flour mill, then by the arrival of the textile industry. And it's thanks to people like Charles Aubert de la Chesnaye, Calixte Gauthier, Louis Lecomte Dupré, and Joseph Masson, who instilled an entrepreneurial spirit from the very beginning, which has endured to make us today the 10th biggest city in Quebec. I invite all to take advantage of the 350th anniversary festivities and to discover what Terrebonne has to offer, such as Ile des Moulins and the magnificent Old Terrebonne, where I'm lucky to have my constituency office. The wonderful team at Coopération 350th has organized wide-ranging and diversified celebrations. I'd like to thank them for all of their efforts and for the heart they've put into this historic year. Happy 350th anniversary, Terrebonne.
That's weird. Hi, Dad! Come watch me at work.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety is accountable for the actions of his staff and his department.
100 likes.
Last week we learned that Canada's
now let's get to 200.
heinous criminal was being transferred from maximum to medium security prison.
And the government knew about this.
Slap in the face to the victims and their families. The minister claimed he was not aware.
He was.
Claims just don't add up. We know that on March 2nd, the minister's office was informed that this transfer would happen. And on May 25th, his office was informed again that this transfer would happen. And on May 29th, the transfer did indeed happen. The minister is either misleading Canadians or he is recklessly incompetent in carrying out the duties as minister. The minister must take responsibility for his inaction and his actions. The Minister of Public Safety must resign.
Yep.
The honourable member for Glengarry, Prescott.
Oh, this is going to be a good episode of Question Period.
Speaker, I rise today in the House to recognize the ALS Awareness Month. It's a moment.
Je vais demander, je ne sais pas ce qui s'est passé, mais...
I'll ask, I'm not sure what's going on. It was a bit loud. I will ask the member to start again, please. The honourable member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize ALS Awareness Month. It's a moment to think about a cause that affects the lives of many Canadians. ALS is a progressive terminal disease which affects the nervous endings of the brain, which leads to a loss of muscular control.
I feel bad for ALS, obviously, but why are politicians talking about that?
With 2 to 3 Canadians diagnosed with ALS every day.
These statistics highlight the need to continue moving forward with research and to improve support for patients and those who help them and to raise awareness amongst the public of this illness.
Behind these numbers, in their honor, in recognition of all Canadians affected by ALS, we need to continue a future without ALS. Thank you to all the researchers who have dedicated countless hours towards developing treatments for this disease.
Okay, nobody cares about what this guy has to say. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that like button, guys. We have more viewers than CPAC.
Tremendous.
We're at 114 likes. Let's try and get to 200 likes, get more viewers. Well, let's put CPAC out of business. Questions. Question orale. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Here we go, everybody.
An entire generation of women will have to relive the trauma of Paul Bernardo with the news that this government moved Paul Bernardo, that monster, from a maximum security facility
to a
medium security facility. He will be able to have visitors. He'll be able to interact with other people.
I mean, he deserves a lot more,
the
a lot
Minister
worse
of Public Safety
jail.
said that he was shocked by the news. We now know that he'd been aware for 3 months. So, what he said was false. Will he resign? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was shocked. I was shocked because I was informed about this on May 30th. The day after Mr. Bernardo was transferred to a medium security institution.
He knew for months.
It was a mistake within my office. I will take tangible action now. We will always defend victims' rights. I will communicate with representatives of the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. We will always stand up for their rights and all victims' rights. The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Of Canadian women have to relive the traumatization of hearing Paul Bernardo's name. They all remember his horrific and monstrous crimes. That they learned that this government decided to free this monster from maximum security prison and allow him to go to medium security, where he'd be able to interact with other people, have visitors, and enjoy other liberties. Now, this minister claimed this was all a big surprise to him. However, we learned today that his office knew in early March and was informed again in May. In other words, he did know, and what he said was false. Will he resign?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. As I said earlier, I was informed on May 30th, the day after.
And you've never once lied, so we should believe you.
Institution. And at that time, I took immediate action expressing the concerns of the families of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French to the Commissioner. There is an internal review process. I have also made it clear to my staff that this should have been briefed immediately. Corrective steps have been taken. I have dealt with it, and we will now always defend the rights of victims.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
No one believes that.
Throwing his staff under the bus.
No.
The office admits that they found out on March the 2nd, 3 months before the minister claimed to be shocked by the news. If his staff had really kept a secret from him of this enormity, he would have fired them a long time ago. But he hasn't, because he knows, and they know, that he knew way back then. So will he do the only honorable thing that is
and resign
to do, and resign?
Let's go, Pierre.
Mr. Speaker, I invite the Leader of the Conservative Party to repeat that allegation outside of the House. I will absolutely reject it.
That's a call for violence. Kick him out. You can't do that. You can't do that. You're protected by parliamentary privilege, and he's threatening Pierre.
Order.
Kick him out.
Order.
Kick him out, Speaker. That's only fair.
I'm going to ask the members to take a deep breath.
Holy crap.
So we discuss in here are very emotional, and we get carried away, but I'm going to ask everyone to take a deep breath and allow the minister to answer so that the Honourable...
Guys, if you haven't yet, now's the time to drop a like on this video. More people have to see this.
Please continue. You have 22 seconds.
This is going to be a crazy day.
Speaker, it is the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada who misleads this House when he impugns my knowledge before May 30th. I had made it absolutely clear that that was the day on which I found out. I have taken corrective steps internally with my office, an office for which I am responsible for, to this Parliament, to the Canadian public, which is why immediately upon knowing that fact, that he was transferred to a medium security institution, I raised it with the Commissioner. I've spoken with the representatives of the families of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, and we will always defend...
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, first of all, I have stated all of these things outside of the House of Commons, so he...
Oh! You can try and threaten Pierre.
Trying to make...
You can't shut him up.
...act on, but more important than that, he did not act. His office knew on March the 2nd. He expects us to believe that his staff just forgot to walk down the hall and inform him that perhaps the most notorious killer in Canadian history was being moved out of a maximum security penitentiary to enjoy more luxuries and more freedoms in a medium security penitentiary. Finally, he has the power now to designate mass murderers all to go into maximum security prisons. He could have done that weeks ago. Why hasn't he done it, and why hasn't he resigned?
Oh, my God.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada lays out a prescription for political interference which foreshadows what Canadians would get with a Conservative government. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we recognize the independence of those decisions, and when I became aware of the fact that Bernardo had been transferred to a medium security institution, I raised it with the Commissioner. I raised the concern.
I'm going to have to interrupt again. I mean, it's getting way out of hand. I just want to take a deep breath.
This could be a historic day. Maybe the Speaker will walk out if it gets too out of hand.
Say you're sorry.
Mr. Speaker,
say you're sorry.
the questions that are posed by the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Canadians know they will get a prescription for political interference. On this side of the House, we're doing it the right way. Today, I will be issuing new ministerial instructions to the Correctional Services of Canada to make sure that they put victims' rights at the centre of decisions to transfer, that they inform victims' families before those transfers take place, and we will always stand up for their rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is the legitimate power of a public safety minister to issue directives about classes of prisoners. The former public safety minister, Ralph Goodale, did that about prisoners suspected of having contraband. Right. That is normal. That is a power that the minister has today. He could classify all mass murderers as requiring maximum security detention. That is a decision he could make now. It is a decision he could have made on March the 2nd when his office became aware that this monster was being transferred out of maximum security prison. Given that he has not done that, and because he has misled this House, will the Prime Minister fire him?
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada did not hear my last answer. We will be issuing new directions to the Correctional Service of Canada to ensure that they put victims' rights at the centre of these decisions, to be sure that they inform victims' families before these transfers take place, and to be sure that I am directly notified on a go-forward. What did they get with Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, the last time they were in government? Cuts to the Correctional Services of Canada in the amount of...
Look at them projected.
Last year of government.
Boo.
That's the difference.
He just can't cope.
And what they will get with our government.
Drop an L in the chat for Marco.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the government must launch an inquiry into Chinese interference.
That was great.
And before the end of the session. The government seems more open, but we're not making any headway in reality because the government is refusing to be clear about their intentions. It's because of an interesting word, one that starts with P. When we talk about inquiry, the government talks about public process, but no matter how hard I try to figure it out, I can't figure out what a public process is. And I'm afraid the candidates for the inquiry don't know what it means either. But you know what is clear and even defined by a law? A public commission of inquiry. That would be clear. So why not just announce a public independent commission of inquiry? Everyone wants it.
It's that simple. All three party leaders want it.
Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. I share with all parliamentarians the desire to decide on the right process. Now, Mr. Speaker, a public inquiry has always been an option on the table, but we need to find the right way to do this work. We need to do so in a way that protects.
That's the first time
confidential.
They've actually admitted that an inquiry is on the table.
We also want to restore Canadians' trust. That's what we want to do.
An inquiry is going to happen within the next month.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Public process again. Mr. Speaker, it's not easy to get facts out of them. When we talk about an inquiry into interference, it's like the government is playing a game of not yes, not no, but it has to say yes. They need to say yes because it's just too important. The government has a duty to launch this inquiry before the end of the session. In order to do so, the government must first announce the format of the inquiry, which should be a commission, and two, ensure that the commissioner is truly independent. No one will accept the position of commissioner if the government keeps its intentions secret. So, public and independent commission of inquiry. One question, yes or no? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said yesterday that we appreciated the Bloc Québécois letter. It was an important step in reaching consensus among parties with regard to the best way to move forward. Now, the colleague says he wants a public independent commission of inquiry. Maybe he didn't hear me. I said that that is an option on the table for the government.
The second time now.
We do need to define the terms of the public inquiry. We need to define and determine the process.
Guys, this is groundbreaking.
We need to determine how we're going to protect confidential information, what the timelines will be, and who the right person should be.
The government is backpedaling, and they're going to do an inquiry.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Office of the Public Security Minister. We just have found out that his office was aware of the transfer of Paul Bernardo out of maximum security 3 months ago, but the minister claims that he only knew about it on May 30th. If the minister can't keep his house in order, how is he going to keep the country safe? When will the minister stop waiting beside a fax machine and start checking his emails for these serious updates?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Sir, I want to thank my colleague from the NDP for his question. As I said earlier in this chamber, that I was notified on May 30th, the day after Paul Bernardo was transferred to a medium security institution. I have taken corrective steps to deal with the issues within my office, and going forward have indicated that we will be issuing new instructions to the Correctional Service of Canada to put victims' rights at the very centre of transfer decisions, to make sure that victims' families are notified, and that is something that I will continue to be focused on every day.
These guys want Paul Bernardo to be out on the streets, man.
For Burnaby South.
The problem doesn't end there. Le directeur du
The director of CSIS confirmed in committee that his department had indeed informed the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, when he was Minister for Public Safety, of the information concerning the member for Wellington Halton Hills. I quote the director. He said, "I shared the information with the Department of Public Safety with very specific instructions to share it with the Minister." So, can the Minister confirm to this House that he is now able to check his emails?
Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
I'm pleased to have an opportunity to clear up a misunderstanding.
That's pretty funny.
The member opposite appears to have. Mr. Speaker, the National Security and Intelligence Advisor, the public safety officials, and Director Vigneault have all been very clear. Ministers and their offices do not have direct access to top-secret electronic networks. Mr. Vigneault did not send his note to me, nor did he notify me that the information had been sent. Director Vigneault had many opportunities to brief me, and unfortunately never briefed me on the contents of his note.
L'honorable député de Bellechasse.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, when we found out last week that serial killer Paul Bernardo was being transferred out of maximum security, the Minister of Public Safety said he was surprised. But according to the CBC, staff in his office knew about the transfer for 3 months. So this is incomprehensible. If ministerial responsibility means anything to the minister, he should resign. Well,
oh my God, everybody's attacking Marco.
Minister of Public Safety.
And I love it.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated, I was shocked by the Correctional Service of Canada's decision to transfer Mr. Bernardo. I was informed of that decision on May 30th. I took immediate action, corrective action in my office, because I take my responsibilities very seriously. We will continue to insist on victims' rights. We will protect victims. I've had good conversations with the representatives of the French and Mahaffey families, and we will work together to protect victims. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Yes, but can you imagine the anxiety, the anguish, the sadness that the victims' families found out that the minister had known about the transfer for 3 months and hadn't done anything? It makes no sense, and it's irresponsible. This minister has lost all credibility when it comes to protecting victims. He needs to resign now. Will he resign, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague is incorrect. I found out on May 30th, as I've said many times now. I am taking action. I will provide new instructions to correctional services. Correctional services should inform victims' families before making the decision to transfer. They should also directly brief me as Minister of Public Safety, and we will always stand up for victims' rights.
The Minister of Public Safety told Canadians that he relied on the advice of law enforcement to implement the Emergencies Act. That was false. He told Canadians that the Beijing-run police stations in our country were closed, and that was false. And then he told Canadians that he didn't know about a child rapist and murderer, Paul Bernardo's transfer out of a maximum security prison. He stood in front of the victims' families and acted shocked. He knew for 3 months, and now he's throwing his staff under the bus. So which staff member did he fire?
Yeah. Wow, Melissa.
Like safety. Mr. Speaker, you're absolutely right. I stood with the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey because I have great care for them, as do all Canadians. That's why I called the Commissioner to express my concerns. That's why she's conducting a review of the decision. That's why I'm issuing new instructions to the CSC. The Honourable colleague refers to the Emergencies Act. I will always defend this government's decision to invoke that act. While we were working around the clock to restore public safety, what were the Conservatives doing? What was the leader of the Conservative Party doing? He was serving up Timmies, Mr. Speaker. In this side of the House, we defend law and order.
Thornhill.
If he claims he doesn't read emails, if he claims he doesn't get briefed by staff, if he claims he doesn't get briefed by his officials, if he claims he doesn't tell the Prime Minister anything, what does he actually do here? He told the families...
He lies and lies and lies.
He had no knowledge of the transfer. He pretended that he had no idea. He re-victimized the families of the victims.
Looked the victims' families in the face and lied.
His own caucus can't even look up at him. There is only one option: resign.
Holy crap!
The Honourable Government House Leader.
He's gonna cry himself to sleep tonight.
Mr. Speaker, the events that occurred.
This amount of pressure that they've put on a previous sworn-in member of parliament was David Johnston to resign. And guess what David Johnston did? He resigned. I'm not saying Marco will resign.
Horrific events.
I'm just putting that out there.
Were a result of the absolutely heinous crimes by Paul Bernardo, are something that are felt viscerally, I would say, by every single Canadian. That what the minister has stated, this is a decision that was made by Correctional Services Canada, which acts independently. The minister indicated that when he became aware of it, he indicated to Correctional Services that he did not find that decision acceptable. And we also have asked to take a victim-centered approach going forward in corrections, and I want to work with the party opposite on that because I know they care.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, this is a pattern of misleading behavior from the minister. That is the problem here. For example, he misled this House when he said he wasn't banning hunting rifles. That was false. He was banning hunting rifles. He misled hunters, he misled farmers, he misled Indigenous Canadians.
Don't mess with Raquel.
To back down on that as a result, but he broke the trust of hunters and firearms owners, Mr. Speaker. He will never get that back. How can the Prime Minister have a Minister of Public Safety that can't be trusted?
The Honourable Government House.
Don't mess with Raquel.
Mr. Speaker, I rise once again because I think that we are all unified in our horror of these crimes. And I think that we're all unified in our desire to make sure that the victims, not only here but in every instance, are protected. And that's why I think the minister's offer to have a conversation about how we can use this to instruct a more victim-centered approach in our corrections is the right approach. And I would invite the opposition to participate in that discussion. I think the minister has been clear that the decisions made by Correctional Services Canada was one that we do not support and have asked them to review.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the member is listening to the exchange going on here. The minister also claimed that the illegal Beijing police stations operating in Canada were closed, but that wasn't true either, was it, Mr. Speaker? These police stations not only violate our sovereignty, but they threaten the security of Chinese Canadians. It is issue after issue with this minister that he continues to mislead the public. It is critical that the Minister of Public Safety, above most ministers,
no longer fit for his job.
Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and yet he has repeatedly misled Canadians on issues of public safety. How can he be trusted to keep us safe when we cannot trust a word he said?
Damn!
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague across the way is not the final arbiter of trust. It is Canadians, and we are working hard every single day to protect public safety. We've introduced Bill C-21, which will take AR-15 style guns out of our communities. The Conservatives want to make those types of guns legal again, Mr. Speaker. My colleague refers to the so-called police stations. The RCMP have repeatedly confirmed that they have taken disruptive action to stop foreign interference in relationship to those so-called police stations. And on the matter of Paul Bernardo, Mr. Speaker, there's an internal review. We're working with the families. We will always stand up for victims' rights.
Dude, you're a crook.
The Honourable Member for...
He's a bully and a crook.
Mr. Speaker, foreign interference is ongoing. Meanwhile, the government...
Right now would be a great time, everybody, to smash that like button. Let's try and get to 500 likes.
Fiasco. The government is incapable of taking the first step, which would be to announce whether or not it intends to launch a public and independent commission of inquiry. This brings to mind the wise words of Talleyrand, who said, "There's only one way to say yes, and that is yes. All the other ways mean no." So, Mr. Speaker, is it yes for an independent public commission of inquiry? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker,
let's see what lies they got.
To repeat the answer I gave another bloc member a few moments ago. We have always said that Canadians and parliamentarians and the country as a whole would benefit from a public process which will follow the report and recommendations of Mr. David Johnston. We have the opportunity to work together to determine what type of process we will have, as well as who will lead the process, the terms of reference of the process as well. I look forward to continuing to work with opposition parties. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, for nearly 4 months now, when it comes to Chinese interference, the government has been giving us a pro-seminar on how to buy time. Now, almost 4 months later, we're back to square one. We have no more time to waste, Mr. Speaker. If we want the Commission of Inquiry to be able to shed light on interference before the next elections, and with our summer recess just around the corner, we have to start the inquiry now.
Yep.
Time is running out, Mr. Speaker. Will the government finally announce a public and independent Commission of Inquiry?
This is the way, the only way.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, I agree with our colleague when it comes to the importance of taking action quickly. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Hopefully, the opposition parties and the government will be able to agree on a process by next week. It would be in the best interests of Canadians that we get that work done. I truly appreciated the letter I received from the Bloc Québécois yesterday. I have had promising conversations with members of other opposition parties, even just today. The work is ongoing, Mr. Speaker, and I feel positive about it.
Paul Bernardo is a brutal serial killer and rapist. He kidnapped, tortured, raped, and murdered teenage girls. His victims and their loved ones have to live with that grief forever. He traumatized an entire generation, the whole country. 2 weeks ago, that monster got moved out of max security. But 3 months before, the minister was told he did nothing, and now he says he can't do anything to keep this dangerous criminal locked up in max. His whole job is to keep Canadians safe, and he can't or he won't. So when will he name and fire the staffer he says screwed up, or just resign?
Wow! I got goosebumps from that.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is right in her characterization of these crimes. I think that she will find no argument from anyone.
She was right on that entire point.
On this issue, I think need to work together to make sure that the families are served and that victims are served. The minister has suggested a conversation about a victim-centered approach in corrections to make sure this mistake that was made independently by Correction Services doesn't happen again. And I hope that the member opposite would take up that conversation. I know how sincere she is in her horror of those events. I know she knows I'm sincere in mine.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
That does not sound sincere.
Accountability and action. These ministers, they can blame everyone else all they want, but the truth is their policies endanger Canadians, and it's a habit. The Liberals soften sentences for kidnapping, sexual assault, and rape, and let those monsters do time at home among their victims and law-abiding neighbours. Crime has skyrocketed because the Liberals give bail, not jail, to violent criminals. But misleading Canadians is that minister's habit. He said law enforcement asked for the Emergencies Act. That wasn't true. He said all Beijing police stations in Canada were closed. That wasn't true. And he's misleading now, isn't he? We know that. When he says that he didn't know about Paul Bernardo's transfer. So when will he finally be accountable and stop all this deliberate deception and results?
Oh my God!
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
I want to be absolutely clear again that I found out about this decision on May 30th. I agree with my colleague that
a hard time hearing the answer. I'm sure many
this is crazy.
As well.
Chat, I need everybody in the chat to spam L's. The Liberals are taking big fat L's today.
And their voices are very loud. I want them to be very mindful of the strength of their voices. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said on numerous occasions, I was personally informed on May 30th, the day after an independent decision was taken by CSE to transfer Paul Bernardo. I expressed shock and outrage at the time, along with the families. I should have been briefed immediately by my staff. I have dealt with that matter internally through corrective steps, and going forward, we have new instructions to the CSE coming to put victims at the very center of these decisions. We will ensure they are notified so that we can take a trauma-informed approach.
The honourable member for South Surrey White Rocks.
Paul Bernardo is a serial rapist and murderer who targeted teenagers.
Yes, he is.
He deserves to stay in a maximum security prison forever, full stop. If his staff keeps secrets from this minister on serious issues, then this public safety minister has no control over his files.
None.
He hasn't fired anyone.
There's no point of him even doing his job because he's not doing it.
His job is to be anti-women, anti-justice, and anti-victim. If these Liberals want to stand with women, tell them to resign.
Oh, you want to be a feminist? Resign, bitch. Sorry.
The opposition wants what they've asked many, many times. I don't know there was ever a point at which they supported the minister, but they don't now, and that's fine. But what we're talking about in the crimes that they are consistently repeating is heinous traumas that were visited upon those families and in an echo way upon every single Canadian. And what I've heard from that minister is an offer to have a conversation about how we ensure that correctional services doesn't make a decision like that again, and that we work together on that. I look forward to constructive offers.
The time for conversation is past.
The honourable member for South Surrey White Rock.
Mr. Speaker, those families are suffering over again because of this inaction by this government. That minister makes an art form of spreading misinformation. He says CSIS didn't inform him that Beijing was targeting an MP. Chinese-run police stations were closed. C-21 didn't target hunting rifles. False, false, and false. Now he says he didn't know Paul Bernardo was transferred to medium security. He's known since March. Canadians deserve a public safety minister who tells the truth, and this one that threatens our safety with his deception. Resign.
Damn. I want some positivity in the chat. I want to see some W's for the Conservatives.
I continue to be focused on the public safety for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I issued directions to the service to ensure that the elected would be briefed on foreign interference and parliamentarians. I am going to be issuing directions to the CSC to be sure that this office is briefed directly when it comes to inmate transfer decisions. That is what responsibility looks like, Mr. Speaker. On the opposite side, what are we getting? We're getting dilatory tactics, delay, filibustering, not supporting the budget. That undermines public safety. On this side of the House, we'll be focused on our paramount objective, which is protecting the safety and security of Canadians.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
We hauled the CEO of Loblaws in front of committee and told
him he's going to stop. Tell him to resign. Tell him to resign.
The reality is, greedflation is a massive contributor to the cost of living going up. But neither the Liberals or the Conservatives have the courage to even mention it. Yesterday, it was confirmed in committee with the Groceries Affordability Report that there needs to be more transparency, and yes, the federal government can do a lot more to bring down the price of groceries. So when will this Prime Minister stop protecting billionaires and start standing up for Canadians?
Oh, he's so embarrassing. You have a chance to team up with everybody.
The House, and that's why
and
our budget has measures in place to make sure that Canadians can actually get through this inflationary cycle. But Mr. Speaker, let's take a look at what we've done on the tax front. We've permanently raised the corporate income tax by 1.5% on the largest banks and insurance companies. We've put in a Canadian recovery dividend for those banks and insurance companies that made more than $1 billion in profit. And Mr. Speaker, we've also put in a luxury tax on vehicles and planes. Mr. Speaker, we're making sure that tax fairness is integral to how we approach things in Canada. We'll continue to do that work.
Nobody cares about the CEO of Loblaw.
Mr. Speaker, every election, the Liberals campaign on electoral reform. Yet the only thing the Liberals have done is leave a trail of broken promises. Canadians are feeling increasingly disengaged, not seeing their votes represented. People don't want political games. They expect action. The NDP believe all Canadians deserve a voice in our democracy. So my question is simple, Mr. Speaker. Will the Liberals make right on their promises and implement a citizens' assembly on electoral reform?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our colleague for the question. What we're focused on is working collaboratively, in fact, with the NDP Her colleague and I have had a number of meetings.
Oh, yes, you are working with the NDP.
Implement the agreements in the supply and confidence agreement to make voting more accessible, exactly as our colleague identified, to ensure the greatest number of Canadians can participate in the democratic process, to deal with issues like mail-in ballots, allowing people to vote at different polling stations, ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that our electoral system is safe but accessible also to the greatest number of people in the easiest way. Those are our priorities.
I'd just like to point out to the honourable member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies, I realize you have a very strong voice and we can all hear it. I just
Bob Zimmer.
Realize that yourself. The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that Canada is a top destination for many travellers from around the world. Though we experience cold winters, Canadians are known for their warm welcome. In my riding of Don Valley East, we have a very vibrant Caribbean population whose loved ones from abroad are hoping to visit Canada and spend more time with their loved ones. In fact, Mr. Speaker, as we speak, my Auntie Maria is visiting from Trinidad. Right. There has been some updates in the visa process here in Canada, and I'd like to ask the Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship to share some of these updates with us in the House today.
Great question.
Well, Minister,
this probably has to be the worst question of today.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague for his question and for his advocacy for liberalised travel policy when it comes to Canada. I'm pleased to share with this House that last week we announced a major change to immigration policy that's going to allow more people to come to Canada visa-free if they have held a Canadian visa within the past 10 years or hold a current American visa, and this applies to nationals of 13 different countries, including Trinidad and Tobago. This is going to allow them to access our country for a $7 application fee, and approval will come within a mere minutes. His aunt will be able to continue to visit, and I look forward for more
that's what we need.
United and a successful tourism season this summer.
The honourable member for Peterborough, Kawartha.
3 months. 3 months. The Office of the Minister of Public Safety knew that Canada's most heinous criminal was being moved from maximum to medium security. Paul Bernardo is a serial killer, a serial rapist, and without a doubt the most heinous monster of our time. Yet this minister didn't tell the victims' families and pretended to be shocked by the news. Today, Conservatives demand the minister stand in this House, apologize, do the right thing. Just say sorry and resign. If you care about these victims' families, do it.
Whoa! Of course, Marco isn't going to answer the question himself.
Members to place their questions through the chair, not directly.
Shut the hell up, Speaker.
For that matter.
Boo.
House Leader. Mr. Speaker, it's just to observe that I don't think that casting aspersions about whether anybody in this House doesn't feel absolute horror and repulsion at these crimes. It just isn't a constructive or useful approach to accuse anyone of not caring about these families or these victims. The member obviously knows, just as she cares deeply about what happened in those crimes, so does every member of this House. There's an opportunity to talk about how we can ensure the decision that was made by Correctional Services Canada doesn't happen again, and that is action, and that is an opportunity that we have to take this together.
The honourable member for Peterborough, Kawartha.
The Minister of Public Safety can't even stand in the House and answer the question I just gave him. He can't
stand up and apologize
and say to those victims' families, "I'm sorry." Instead, he wants to divert. He wants to blame everyone else. He is the minister. The buck with public safety stops with him. No one else.
Whoa!
Will he resign? And if he won't resign, tell us right now which staff member is going down for not telling him.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
I got goosebumps. Get up, Mendicino, you...
Mr. Speaker,
Ooh, I got words for you.
I want to assure that member and all members in this chamber that I grieve with the families of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. I said so when I first communicated my shock and outrage at the decision of the CSC. I said so this morning when I spoke to the representative for the families. I think all members can and should empathize with those families, with the families of all victims, and we will continue to do everything that is necessary to put their rights at the very center of those decisions which are taken around the transferring of inmates. That's precisely what I've done today by signaling new instructions to the CSC.
It's allergy season, and he's allergic to saying sorry.
I remember sitting here 5 years ago
when the public safety minister said he would make changes to the prison transfer program when another child killer, Terry Lynn McClintock, was transferred to a minimum security healing lodge. You know, right now, I am struck by the fact that the Prime Minister has only ever fired one person. So I've got to wonder, does the Minister think the reason the Prime Minister hasn't fired him, while he did fire Jody Wilson-Raybould for doing the right thing, is because of Jody's gender?
Whoa! Flip the script! Flip the script! Welcome to politics, baby.
I would say that, again, I've offered many times to have a constructive conversation around specifics about how we can deal with the decision made by Correctional Services Canada. Instead, you know, we're getting into what I would categorize as very partisan territory on an issue that is extremely sensitive, that we're dealing with victims here that we all care about. And I look across to the member. I know that she cares as much about this as any other member does in the House. So let's have a constructive conversation. I would suggest that victims is not a...
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Respectfully, I would argue the government has had 5 years to have a constructive conversation with this. Since Terry Lynn McClintock was re-victimized, her family was re-victimized when she was transferred to a minimum security prison. You know, my colleagues have already lined down the litany of failures of this minister. It's not just the Bernardo issue today. So, if he won't admit a gendered aspect to the firing in his cabinet, which I think is true, will he at least have the courage to name which one of his staff he's going to make fall on their sword for this issue?
Oh, politics at its finest.
Mr. Speaker, all of us, unfortunately, have had our lives touched with crime. That is something that, unfortunately, some have to live with, and unfortunately, in the case of these victims, in the most horrific and awful way. The only thing that is gendered about it is, unfortunately, women are more often the victims than not. But having responsible, mature conversations about that and about how we deal with an independent, and because corrections is independent, we cannot direct them. How we create policies that make sure that we have the right outcomes is the conversation that we need to have.
L'honorable député.
This is getting crazy.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the director of CSIS confirmed that he had warned the minister in a memo that a member of parliament was being threatened by China. But the note was apparently lost in limbo because the Minister for Public Safety was never notified. Yesterday, we also learned that the same bad luck had befallen his public safety colleague. His office had known for 3 months that Paul Bernardo would be transferred from prison, but he was never notified either. Why is it that when it comes to security, everyone knows about these things apart from ministers responsible for the matter? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the former Minister for Public Safety noted that he had not been notified by CSIS, and that is the kind of file I dealt with to make sure that information will be briefed by CSIS as rapidly as possible when there are incidents that have to do with foreign interference. I'm publishing new directives for CSIS to protect the rights of victims. The Honourable Member for Avignon-la-Métis, Metapedia. Speaker, this brings us back to the heart of Chinese interference. The Prime Minister is also unlucky with his briefing notes, apparently. They get lost in limbo. He, too, was never warned of the threats against the MP for Wellington-Halton Hills. Even though CSIS produced a briefing note and briefs the Prime Minister every week, the information was lost halfway through, as with his 2 security ministers. Mr. Speaker, are all their cabinet ministers dysfunctional, or is it the ministers who managed to know just what suits them? The Honourable Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to intelligence sharing, when there are threats to MPs from abroad, we recognise that there was a shortcoming and we have corrected it. The Minister for Public Safety gave clear instructions from here on in. This kind of information must be shared, not only with the minister responsible, but also with the parliamentarian who is being targeted. This is a positive change that we have implemented.
Member for Niagara Falls.
Speaker, it's unacceptable that the families of the victims of Paul Bernardo were only informed of his prison transfer after it had taken place. They have every right to be shocked and outraged. But the Minister of Public Safety has absolutely zero excuses, especially when he and his staff knew of this transfer for 3 months. Paul Bernardo should be in a maximum security prison. When will this minister do the right thing? Canadians deserve better. Victims' families deserve better. Will this minister resign?
Yes.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with one aspect of the member opposite's question, and that is I do agree that victims' families should be notified ahead of these transfer decisions. That's precisely what we are in the course of doing, is issuing new instructions to the Correctional Service of Canada so that we can prevent another situation like that from occurring again. We will continue to put victims' rights forward and front and center when it comes to these decisions, and I agree to work with my colleague opposite who represents the Niagara region, the colleagues on this side of the House, some of whom have been personally and profoundly impacted along with the victim's family, so that we can prevent a tragedy like this from occurring again.
Marco's lost quite a bit of weight.
Member for Charlotte Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, CBC reports that the Minister of Public Safety staff knew that Paul Bernardo would be transferred to a medium security facility 3 months before it happened. Neither the Deputy Minister or upper officials were aware. So, can the Minister say who committed the mistake, and has this person been fired? The Honourable Minister.
Let's try and get to like 800 likes, everybody.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be clear.
Take a look on the stream if you've smashed that like button if you haven't.
My office have been addressed by me today. It is important for us to focus on the rights of victims. And today, I am emitting new directives to correctional services that will put the rights of victims at the heart of our approaches when it comes to transferring or not offenders. This will make sure that in the future, I, as Public Safety Minister, will get information directly when such a decision is made. The Honourable Member for Charlotte Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister admits that there has been a whole comedy of errors in his office, as we saw in January when the Minister stated that the Safe Third Country Agreement was great for Roxham Road. Hundreds of illegal migrants were coming through, however. 2 months later, however, the Prime Minister and President Biden reached an agreement to close Roxham Road, but the Minister had said that it was impossible to close it. It's a comedy upon comedy of error. So, will they finally fire these people, and will the Minister finally resign? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Minister for Immigration, has signed a new agreement with the United States with two objectives. One, to protect the rights of refugees, which is essential. And second of all, to strengthen the integrity of our borders. That's exactly what we are doing with new investments for the CBSA, $450 million. We will always protect the rights of refugees, and that has been put forward with this new agreement. The Honourable Member for Sudbury. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party would have you believe that the abortion debate is over, but it seizes every opportunity to reopen it. Recently, the member for Yorkton Melville tabled a bill to restrict women's rights to reproductive health services. And now, we cannot take this right for granted. Can the Minister tell us what our government is doing to protect the right to choose? The Honourable Minister for Sports. I would like to thank the member for Sudbury for her question and her advocacy on this important issue. I would like to reassure her and reassure all Canadians that we will not allow the Conservative Party, we won't allow them to do sneakily what can be done overtly. They are trying to stop women from having the right to choose. They're trying to gain votes by reopening the abortion debate. It's a shame. It's a shambles in 2023. The Liberal government will always be here to defend the rights of women. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of the Opposition.
Here we go.
When Canadians find it hard to feed themselves and pay bills, the Prime Minister disbursed $200 million to the Asia Investment Bank. Now, this bank's head of communications has revealed through her resignation that the bank is controlled by Beijing in order to strengthen the Chinese empire throughout the world with Canadian taxpayer money. Will the Prime Minister claw this money back for Canadians? And will he redisperse it to Canadians? The Honourable Minister for Tourism. Mr. Speaker, like the Deputy Prime Minister stated earlier today, in response to this question, the Government of Canada will immediately put an end to all activities, government activities in the banks, and she's asked the Department of Finance to study allegations made and Canada's position with the Asia Investment Bank. The Government of Canada will discuss this matter with its allies and partners that are members of the bank. The investigation will have to happen rapidly, and we will
call an inquiry.
The results.
Conservatives told the Prime Minister that while Canadians couldn't pay for groceries, he had no business sending over $200 million tax dollars to the Beijing-controlled Asian Infrastructure Bank to fund pipelines and roads and bridges over there. Now we've been proven right by the head of communications for that very bank, who's resigned, saying that it's dominated by the Communist Party and being used to build Beijing's empire around the world. The government says it's going to cease operations now, but the question is, where is the $200 million of Canadians' money that he gave that bank?
The Honourable Minister.
As the Deputy Prime Minister said earlier today in response to this matter, the Government of Canada will immediately halt all government-led activity at the bank, and she has instructed the Department of Finance to lead an immediate review of the allegations raised and of Canada's involvement at the AIIB. The Canadian government will also be discussing this issue with our allies and partners who are members of the bank. The review announced today is to be undertaken expeditiously. No outcome is being ruled out following its completion.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That wasn't the question. Conservatives agreed with Japan and the United States that refused to give money to the Beijing-controlled Asian Infrastructure Bank. We pleaded with the Prime Minister not to throw our money away on this enterprise that was designed to expand Beijing's empire around the world, building infrastructure in other countries. But 200 million Canadian tax dollars has gone into this bank, so I will ask for a third time. Where is our money, and how will we get it back?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to repeat that the Government of Canada has halted all activities, all government-led activities at the AIIB, and our government has instructed the Department of Finance to lead an immediate review of the allegations to end the raise of Canada's involvement at the AIIB. Mr. Speaker, this review is to be done expeditiously, and no outcome has been taken off the table.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Louis.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Bill S5, which seeks to modernise the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which had not undergone a major overhaul in more than 20 years, was adopted. Parliamentarians spent more than 50 hours working on this bill. The strengthened bill has steps forwards with regards to protecting human health and the environment. Can the Minister for the Environment provide the House with an update on the implementation of Bill S5 that seeks to protect our healthy environment? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for all of his work as chair of the committee, as well as all members of the committee and the Senate, because yesterday evening the Bill S5 was adopted in the Senate. For the first time in Canadian statutes, we add the right to a healthy environment for all Canadians. This is a first for our country. We will work very hard over the next few months to define how this right will be actually implemented in Canadian statutes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, my riding is cut in half. Highway 4 has been closed for over a week because of wildfires. With the closure, local food banks are suffering as people are trapped. This is impacting people who are already struggling with food insecurity. They're worried, and many don't know where their next meal will come from. Will the federal government provide emergency funding to local food banks, small businesses, the community, and emergency unemployment insurance to help people cut off by the wildfires?
Yes. The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for a very important question, and I want to assure him I will reach out today to the British Columbia government.
I highly doubt you'll even remember to do that.
Between federal supports and the province's work to serve that community, and we will work with him and those communities to ensure that the people impacted by those wildfires receive the supports that they require.
He can't even talk.
Member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, carbon capture and storage is
Oh, here we go with the Green Party.
Analogy. In fact, it often emits more carbon than it captures. Yet this government keeps giving...
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the question. There's someone shouting just over here. I'm sure they don't want
I can't take him seriously.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre, from the top, please. From the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, carbon capture and storage is unproven technology. In fact, it often emits more carbon than it captures. Yet this government keeps giving our money to big polluters to experiment with it. $520 million in this year's budget alone. And now we know why. Oil and gas executives helped write our government's own strategy on carbon capture. Will the government stop outsourcing the climate plans to the very industry most responsible for the crisis we're in?
I'm gonna piss myself. Oh my God.
Natural resources.
Oh, it's a child screaming. Oh, that's so funny.
Let's give it a second to calm down. I think.
Oh my God, I'm crying.
Natural resources.
Mr. Speaker, to my honourable colleague, I would certainly say that his technical assessment is simply wrong, and I'd be more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with him about carbon capture and storage technologies. The development of thoughtful policy requires gathering input broadly, including environmental organizations, including Indigenous peoples, including civil society, and including industry. When we were developing the carbon management strategy for Canada, there were 1,500 organizations and individuals that provided input. The advisory group that was referenced by the honourable member included a whole range of people, including Ed Whittingham, the former executive director of the Pembina Institute. And
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for question period today.
Oh, man.
I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery.
Nobody cares about who's in the gallery. I almost pissed myself with that Green Party. Holy crap, man. That was just an emotional roller coaster. The ups and downs, the screaming, the feminism, the calls to resign, the calls for accountability. This is awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Normally it's Wednesday. Yeah, so normally Wednesdays, Pierre Poilievre does like significantly more talking, but because of time and because other members from other parties spoke quite a bit, he didn't get his second chance at speaking. Normally he talks for about 20 plus minutes on Wednesdays, but it didn't work out to be that way. This was awesome. I'm glad you were all here with me. I'd like to encourage you to just scroll down and check to see if you're subscribed and check to see if you've actually liked the live stream. It would help push it out further for the video on demand for after the live. And my face may look familiar, Mistersunshinebaby. I've got several YouTube channels, but this is House of Canada, where we exclusively do House of Commons live streams for every single question period and House of Commons clips. So I'd like to just remind you to check to see if you're subscribed, and might as well hit it, might as well turn on the notifications and like that stream. We're close to 1,000 with several thousand people watching. So if a few hundred people smash that button, then we could maybe surpass 1,000 likes. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. This was entertaining, and we will see you all same time tomorrow for the stream. And stay tuned for upcoming clips, as well as on my main channel, Mistersunshinebaby. Stay tuned for